There, you're recording now.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to have our monthly office hour today. It is our last one of this school year as we wrap up this year of implementation for our student growth portfolios. Today, we're going to be focusing on how your teachers' portfolio scores are calculated. I'm going to share with you the reports that you have access to in Portfolium to view your teacher scores, as well as some reports to help you understand how your teacher scores were calculated and how to help them after scores are released if they have questions about their portfolio scores. The first thing I want to refer you to is our team portfolio guidebook. I have put a hyperlink here in the PowerPoint for you. It's also on the portfolio resources page on the team website. On page 9 and 10 is an explanation of the things I'm going to talk about in the next few slides. After our submission deadline last week on May 1st, the collections are now going into a queue to be scored by our certified peer reviewers. Peer reviewers will begin scoring on May 30th, and peer review will end on June the 16th. Our peer reviewers will look at the student work and determine by analyzing the student work the performance level of that student work. They will use the same scoring rubric throughout, the same scoring rubric for that standard at point A and point B that the teachers are using when they self-score their student work. The collection receives a gross score first. Peer reviewers only score a collection. So it could be, keep in mind, teachers have 4 collections for a complete portfolio. So the collections go out to different peer reviewers. A collection is scored with 3 students. Remember, we have the emerging, proficient, and advanced student in a collection. And each of those 3 students have a point A and a point B. For the collection to receive a gross score, we calculate the difference from first the emergent students, point A to point B, the proficient students' difference between their point A and point B, and the advanced students' difference between point A and point B. And then those 3 numbers are averaged to calculate a gross score for the entire collection. Once those collections are scored, then when that average is collected, then we take that average for the collection and apply it to our chart. And the chart is here on the next page. So we apply it to this chart. So for example, if we have from point A to point B, at point A, a student scored at a level 0, and at point B, the student scored at a level 1. That's one level of growth. And then at the next student, the proficient student, maybe they scored at a 0 and they moved to level 3. So they grew 2 levels of growth. So that's 1 plus 2, and that's 3. And then maybe the advanced student went from 3 to 4. So that's 1 level of growth. So now we have the number 4. So we take 4 divided by 3. Should have done that in advance. So 4 divided by 3. And that would be 1.3. So 1, but less than 2 levels of growth. That collection would score a level 3. Okay? Each of the collections are scored, as I said, by a peer reviewer. The first peer reviewer scores the collection. So for that example I just gave, the peer reviewer scored that collection. The average was a level 3. If the average of the teacher's self-score is in consensus with that peer reviewer score, then the peer reviewer's score of a level 3 for that collection stands. If the teacher's self-score is more than 1 performance level difference from the peer reviewer's average score for that collection, if they're off, so the peer reviewers average for that collection I just used as an example was a 3, if the teacher's average score was a 5, then that's more than one level off, so that entire collection goes to a second peer reviewer. When the second peer reviewer scores all the student work and we get an average, if the second peer reviewer's average is in consensus with the teacher's score, so maybe the second peer reviewer's score was a 4, so it's within one of the teachers, or it's within one of that first peer reviewer's score, then the second peer reviewer's score that isn't whichever one is in consensus with, if it's in consensus with the teacher, then it will be it will stand, or if it's in consensus with the first peer reviewer, then that number will stand. If it's still off, let's say the second peer reviewer's average score was a 1. So we know it's still off. It's not in consensus with either the first peer reviewer or the teacher's self-score. That's when the entire collection will go to one more reviewer who is an expert reviewer. The expert reviewer's average score for that collection stands. It does not, there is no consensus with the expert reviewer score for any of the other reviewers or the teacher. Expert reviewers' scores are always the final score. And so keep in mind, this is for a collection. And then so each of the collections, which we know all portfolios have 4, each collection will receive a score, either from a first reviewer, second reviewer, or an expert reviewer. Then once those 4 collections have an average score, those 4 gross scores are averaged, and then that number is the teacher's portfolio score. And that number will be the teacher's 35% individual gross score as part of their LOE. So when we take those 4 numbers, add them up, divide by 4, we apply them to this scale. So if the average was a 4.25, that portfolio would receive a 5. If the average was 1.89, that portfolio would receive a 2. Again, all of this information is on page 9 and page 10 of the teacher guidebook. So this is how the teacher's portfolio collections are scored. When teachers log into Portfolium beginning July the 10th, this is what a teacher sees. When they log in, they're most likely still in their collections. They will move down and click on My Score. When they click on My Score, they will see their overall portfolio score. This is the number that was calculated from the average of the 4 collections from this chart. So this teacher that scored a level 5, her average number could have been anywhere between 4.2 to 5. Again, teachers can see this score on July the 10th. If your teachers had any of their 4 collections not complete, and you all received a list of those names of teachers who did not finish their portfolio, they will see on this page that they had more than one or more collections that were not 100% complete. Portfolios that had any incomplete collections did not go to peer review. They will not be scored, and they will receive an incomplete NT Encompass for their 35%. Because of that incomplete, they will not generate an LOE for this school year. So now I want to show you how you can go into the platform when teachers ask you about their score. So the first report I want to show you is a report we have not looked at this year. It's under the reporting tab, under teacher usage. You will go down to the one that is called point level score details. This will show you the scores for each of the point A's and point B's within a collection. So I want to show you an example. Here's an example of 2 different teachers. The grade area is a kindergarten teacher. So we see they had 4 collections. and each collection has a point A and a point B. And then this is a pre-K teacher. Again, pre-K has 4 collections, 2 ELA, a point A and a point B, and you see that going forward. I also want to bring to your attention, we have in all of the models except PE, there are 3 students. So I have hid some of these columns because in the pre-K and kindergarten, we only have 3 student samples, emerging, proficient, and advanced. You will see on your report columns that say sample 4, 5, and 6, but those are only if you have PE teachers. PE teachers do have 6 samples. So if you're not doing PE, you can follow my example and just hide these columns. They will be empty for samples 4, 5, and 6. So here I can see that this teacher, and I'll just do the first one as an example. For her self-score at point A, for this ELA collection, her student work scored at a 0, and at point B, the student scored at a 7. And then you can continue to look along. For the second student, point A, the teacher scored that work at a 2, and the B at a 7. And then for the advanced, the student work at A, the teacher scored at a 4 and then a 7. Now remember on the prior slides, we said we take the difference from A to B. So the difference from 0 to 7 is 7. The difference from 2 to 7 is 5. 4 to 7 is 3. You average that number, and that will give you the teacher's gross, what she is calculated as her self gross score for this collection. No, I'm sorry. You would take, yes, that's right. And then you would take the peer reviewer 1 for the collection. Okay, so I'm saying that wrong. We're not just going to score this. Yeah, so this is the collection, this one point A to point B. So that's right. I'm so sorry. So you take the average of 7 plus 5 plus 3, divide by 3, and that's the teacher's self-score for this one collection. Then you will take the peer reviewer 1's average, so 6 plus 5 plus 3, that average. And if these two numbers, so clearly these two numbers, this average and the teacher's average were within 1, so it did not go to a second peer reviewer or to an expert reviewer. This collection down here for the same teacher, we can see that the peer reviewer 1's average was not in consensus with the teacher's self-score, so this collection had to go to a second peer reviewer. The second peer reviewer's average was in consensus with either the first peer reviewer or the teacher's self-score, so this collection did not go to expert review. And then for this pre-K teacher here, we can see the teacher's average and the peer reviewer 1's average were not in consensus, so it went to a second peer reviewer. This second peer reviewer's average for this collection was not in consensus with either the first peer reviewer or the teacher's self-score. So in this scenario, this collection went to expert review. If you don't see any numbers in peer reviewer 2 or in expert review, then you know that the first peer reviewer's average was in consensus with the teacher's self-score for that collection. So this will be a great report when teachers ask you, for example, why did I get a 3? You can look specifically to see what each collection scored based on what the teacher scored, how the teacher scored it. You can see how the peer reviewer scored each sample and for each kid in that sample and how many times it went to peer review. Again, just keeping in mind, if the average from the students point A to point B for those 3 students, if it falls in an average of 1 or less than 1, that's a 3. And then you apply each one of these. If it's less than 1 level, that's a level 2. if there's no growth. So an example of that would be if a teacher, and we see this sometimes when teachers upload student work that is not aligned to the standard. So for example, it's an ELA collection, but the teacher uploaded math work, that wouldn't be aligned at all. So this work would score 0 at A and 0 at B. Peer reviewers could not score it. So there would be 0 growth. And so no growth would be a level 1 for that collection. Another report you can look at a higher level is what was the average of each collection. So to know the collections average, you click on reporting, collection level progress, and you'll get this report. So here you will see the final average for that collection. So here I can see the collection for this one example across here is foundational literacy collection. The collection score was a 3 by the teacher. The peer reviewer won for that collection. The average was a 3. So the 3 is what stood. The final score was a 3. Here's a teacher what we can see for her same teacher, for the counting and cardinality collection. The teacher's average gross score was a 5. Peer reviewer 1's average was 1. You can clearly see that's not in consensus. So it went to peer reviewer 2. Peer reviewer 2's average was 3. 3 is not in consensus with either 1 nor 5. So it went to the expert. When the expert reviewer scored, the expert reviewer score stands every time. This number will always be applied to the final score. So the teacher's average gross score was actually a 5. Here we can see this teacher, her gross score, the self-score was a 4. The first peer reviewer's average score was 1, not in consensus. And when it went to the second reviewer was actually in consensus with the teacher's self-score. Keep in mind, if it's in the second reviewer's score is in consensus with either the first peer reviewer or the teacher, whichever one it's in consensus with, that is the one that the score goes to. So the 4 is in consensus with the teacher. The final gross score is a 4. Here's the opposite. The second peer reviewer is in consensus with the first peer reviewer. So the second peer reviewer's score is the final score. And so again, when teachers ask you a breakdown of what did each of my collections score, you can go to this report to see a quicker view of what in the entire collections average was and how many times it went to peer review. And over here in this column, it will actually tell you how many reviews the student work, the collection went to. Again, that average, and I'll go back one. So if you take this teacher here, her 4 collections, if you took 3, 5, 5, and 5 and averaged that number, do that real quick. That would be a 4.5. So when the portfolio score for this teacher, a 4.5 would fall in this range. So that portfolio would receive a level 5. An even broader view, and on July the 3rd, you'll be able to review all of these reports in your district administrator access. On July the 3rd, you can click on your teacher directory, and this is the directory you have been using all year. When you click on your teacher directory, and you, again, always remember to filter out the people you removed. So you want to filter that column, was access removed, to the number 0, and only look at your teachers, was access removed 0. And then once that you have that filter on, go to your teacher effectiveness indicator. This number is your teacher's final portfolio score. Here I see this teacher has no score. So that keep in mind, a blank space, no score indicates this teacher will get an incomplete in T Encompass in the portfolio score box, and this teacher will not receive an LOE. So next steps. Make sure you have already notified all of the teachers that were in your email that listed as having incomplete, that they are not surprised when portfolio scores come out, when LOEs are generated in the fall. Make sure your teachers know of their incomplete status. On July the 3rd, you'll notice you all receive the teacher scores a week before they do. This gives us a week for you to check your scores, see if there's any errors or if you have any questions, so that you're aware of how to answer your teacher's questions before they receive the scores on July the 10th. Review those reports and be prepared to support your teachers. If you have any questions, as always, please email us at portfolio.questions@tn.gov, and we are happy to reach back out to you and get answers to you as fast as we can. Also, I want to remind you that all of the information that I just discussed in the explanations today of the growth scores calculating can be found in our team guidebook. So here's a hyperlink to the guidebook, as well as you can go back and watch any of our monthly office hours from this school year. This office hour will also be online within the next few days. And as always, I thank you for coming to our meetings. This being our last meeting, I would encourage you to all please complete this survey that we have hyperlinked here, as well as Micah's going to drop the link to this survey in our chat. And I also emailed you the survey link. So I really want to hear your feedback on how implementation went this year and how we can improve implementation for next year.